I think it might be interesting to look at the Russian response to Trump indictment, as Russian state TV and Russian propagandists, including Vladimir Solovyev, who is one of the most popular Russian propagandists in Russia, invited on a guest who was supposed to be like an expert on America, I think, who said some very interesting things about us sliding into civil war. Let's watch. Oh, and Trump being persecuted, of course. Dmitry, one second, let me move this up a little bit. There we go. Dmitry is joining us. His Telegram channel, Professor Looks at the World. Good morning, Dmitry. Listen, I've never seen or heard of anything like this in my entire life. In America, they are attempting to destroy Trump, and to do it unbelievably fast. I put it in this way, Vladimir. First of all, the situation is obviously more critical than it seems to us. We don't see the United States as a vessel of wisdom or the origin of democracy. But it seems like even we are not aware of some aspects of the situation, like a steamroller. In violation of the written and unwritten norms, they are trying to quickly shut down the former president of the United States of America, as they say. By the way, notice that they don't go through any of the indictment in this segment at all. They don't go through any of the indictment, any of the claims brought forward, any of the evidence. They don't talk about in the entirety of the segment. I've already watched the segment, okay? I've already watched the segment. I just want to show you guys it because it's crazy. They don't go through the indictment, the 45-page indictment. They don't go through any of the evidence that has been presented against Trump. They don't go through any of the specifics, because the point of this is not to actually look at the validity of the case against Trump. It is Trump has a case against him, therefore it is political persecution, because Biden is evil, America is evil. Look at their hypocrisy and their democracy. This is a persecution of Trump. I have to tell you, this is really something. This means that things are really bad. They were certain that no one would follow Trump. They thought that Trump would be a disco dancer. He would dance disco in front of the rednecks. Well, he did still do the disco in front of the rednecks. That's kind of undeniable. Meanwhile, the Democrats would win. Now they no longer have this certainty. This means only one thing: very serious powers with big money have committed to Trump. To them, Trump is a lesser evil than all the rest. I don't think for the big money interest that necessarily Trump is a lesser evil. I think that they know that Trump's probably going to be the nominee, and Trump v. Biden, they know Trump would probably deregulate their industries or go after labor protections more and stuff like that in favor of money and interests. Against Joe Biden, who, even though he's still not as strong as I would like him to be, is stronger on things like labor issues and environmental regulations and investments into green energy, stuff like that, even if it's not nearly as much as I would like. I understand these big money people. A moron as their president is better than nuclear war. I love that even Russian state TV has to be like, yeah, Trump's a moron, but, you know, at least he doesn't want to destroy the world, right? Like Biden does, even though we're the ones making the threats of nuclear war, not the Americans. You don't see America saying, we will nuke Moscow. You don't see that. You only really see that from the Russians, because they have to leverage it, because they've used all the rest of their military tools, and they don't really have much more at their disposal except saber rattling. A moron as their president is better than nuclear war. This is what I can say thus far. These events are snowballing, that's for sure. Do you think this guy has listened to the Brad Raffensperger audio of Trump trying to pressure the Secretary of State of Georgia into overturning the results of the election and finding the exact amount of votes necessary for him to win? Gave him the exact number too. Do you think he even knows anything about Mark Meadows and him testifying? Does he know anything about this? Has he even watched the January 6th committee? No, he hasn't. It's just Trump's being persecuted. wow, this is once in a lifetime, right? By the way, the Watergate scandal was once in a lifetime. Does that mean it was incorrect to go after the brave American president, Mr. Nixon? No. It could be that Nixon was actually, in his administration, was actually involved in criminal activity. Could that not also be the case here? That isn't even taken into consideration. What option does Trump still have? Calling citizens to take up their arms, starting a civil war. He is practically doing this already. At least he's getting close. During his Pennsylvania rally, he said something to the effect of, "Dear citizens, stand strong, unite. Nuclear war is behind us." That doesn't even... Look, I am all for trashing Donald Trump and dragging him through the mud as an evil Democrat liberal, but that doesn't at all sound like a call to civil war. And he said it sounded something like that. So I don't think he has anything that could actually be like a call to civil war, right? Like Donald Trump will do some stuff where he have like scary editing in his ads, be like, "We need to fight the Democrat deep state," da da da. And that rhetoric is very hyperbolic. It is very, you know, toxic, but it's still not a call to civil war. But you know, there's a book that's taught in the Russian Military Academy called The Foundation of Geopolitics. I talk about this too much. I gotta stop talking about it. But when it's, you know, when it's necessary, it's necessary. In that book, it was actually written by Alexander Dugin. Alexander Dugin is often overemphasized the amount of influence that he has. But that one book is taught in the Russian Military Academy to officers. I think it actually, unless they changed it recently, it was mandatory reading for officers. And in that book, it says that you can't really defeat America in a one-on-one showdown. So the intent of the state should be to undermine America from within, to support radicals in the United States, and to heighten racial tensions. And they point to racial tensions specifically. Basically, it calls for trying to cause a civil war within the United States by ramping up radicals and causing racial strife, either to start a race war or a civil war or a combination of both. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that this segment is part of some like deep state operation, but Solovyev is a state commentator for the state media in Russia. Russia has a deep interest in heightening divisions within the United States, and the Internet Research Agency and other Russian government apparatuses, including Yevgeny Prigozhin's troll farms, which he used to manage, specifically tried to pump up like really like stereotypical examples of Black Lives Matter activists, where they would even make fake accounts in order to try to hype up tension on one side and then go on the other side and hype up both sides of an issue and try to hype up the rhetoric to get as bad and as possibly violent as possible in order to cause tension online that could possibly spill into the streets. That happened. We know that happened. It's confirmed that they did that. That's already filed. We know that. So there's an interest in the Russian government to try to heighten these types of divisions. And they want Donald Trump to start making these types of calls. Whether we like it or not, nuclear war is second from the top on the list of what scares an average American. The average middle American fears a nuclear war. The American youth is not affected by anything. They listen to rap and make social media posts. They don't care about this. Is this like the Russian boomer version of all girls do is eat hot chip, be on their iPhone and lie? I think this is the Russian boomer version of that. This is 100% the Russian boomer version of that. No, the youth don't care about all dying in nuclear hellfire. All they care about is TikTok and Twitter and the Snappy Chats. And Flappy Bird. Hey, Reservoir, thank you so much for the raid of 57. Can we get a little Article 5 as a treat? A little Article 5 as a treat? You know what? You're violating my Article 5 of my channel by raiding me like that, so we might have to do a counter raid back into the channel that raided us when time permits. We might have to do a counter strike, as it were, okay? So you're violating my site, both gutter chats and site chats, my whole channel's Article 5. Anyway, where were we? Let's continue listening to these very rational political actors. But for an average middle-aged American, nuclear war is almost at the... Oh, God, that was quick. Nuclear war is almost at the top of what he fears. What he fears most is a hike of the interest rate. But he practically said this. You're asking me, esteemed Vladimir, but I don't know the answer to this question. Nothing like this ever happened in American history. Never. By the way, over here, they've livened up. I endorse your every word. During the last 4 to 5 weeks, some young people have crept out in the last 4 to 5 weeks, and Volgograd is not the only instance. They've sensed freedom. Let's be honest. They've sensed the internal weakening of our nation. We should explain to these guys that this isn't so precisely at this moment, which is probably a coincidence, but I doubt it. All of our liberal pro-Western groups have livened up. They're stirring of our liberal pro-Western groups, and their increased bravery immediately echoed within our country. These groups have livened up, saying, something should be done. There should be a coup. And then they will offer us something. I keep asking myself, who will offer us something? These people who are trying to forcibly put their own former president in prison in violation of all norms and procedures? By the way, again, not only does he not talk about the indictment, talk about any of the people who flipped, talk about any of the witness testimony, the video, audio evidence, any of that. I don't even know if he mentioned what he's being charged with. I don't even think he mentioned the 4 counts, right? I don't think he mentioned it at all. Instead of doing that, he's just going to say that this is against norms and procedures. But the fact of the matter is, a president has never tried to do what Donald Trump has tried to do. So if a president has never violated these specific laws, then these charges have never needed to be brought against the president. And even if this did happen before, and I'm sure presidents have engaged in criminal behavior before, undoubtedly, the problem isn't that Donald Trump is being held to account. The problem would be that all those other people, either 100 years ago, 150 years ago, or just 50 years ago, that they weren't held to account as well. That's the problem. But that type of analysis isn't the purpose of this program. The purpose of this program is to basically say, America's in chaos, America's all disjointed, you know, they're on the brink of civil war, he said earlier. America's on the brink of civil war. And the purpose is not only to heighten up those tensions in the United States, which is the intentions of the Russian government, but also to be like, look how chaotic American liberal-style democracy is. You know, maybe some of you might be feeling some reverberations from when the Wagner troops, the Wagner mercenaries, the prisoners that we employed, we paid, and we armed, marched on our capital, killing 20 Russian airmen, and then were not held to account whatsoever. That type of chaos is nothing in comparison to Donald Trump, a former president, being held to account for trying to overturn their norms and overturn our institutions, like our democratic process and the peaceful transfer of power. Anyway, big shock, Russian state TV, kind of dishonest. Do you really believe that people who don't abide by their own written and unwritten laws towards their own will honor them towards you? We can't negotiate with the Americans or the Ukrainians because they arrested Donald Trump. That is a new one. That is, I had never considered that being brought. Could you imagine? There was some peace deal about to be negotiated. This guy shoots up. Niet! Not until you liberate political prisoner Donald J. Trump before he's even had his day in court.
What?
You know, maybe for him, since he lives in Russia, and in Russia, if the government wants to charge you with something and find you guilty, they can just do it no matter what. Like there's no process to actually protect you. If they want to fuck you, they can fuck you. Maybe he assumes, since Donald Trump is having a case against him, he doesn't get a fair trial. And maybe that's an assumption from his personal experience, but that's very Russian centric, okay? He should be maybe a little bit more worldly. Have you totally lost your minds? What big deals are there to make? With whom? Big deals with these people. You can't even make small deals with them. You can't even buy tomatoes from them. Because half of them will be rotten. Sir, before negotiating with the Americans on the war in Ukraine, have you considered tomatoes? This makes me sad, very sad. That is the main thing that saddens me. I'm starting to lean towards your point of view, that a big war is becoming almost inevitable. Yes. We live in interesting times.